Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session. I think we're up to session 4. I'm losing track of the Bookkeepers Growth Summit. So we've had some awesome partners on board already today to present, plan, attract, and engage. And now we've got Ignition, the team at Ignition here to talk us through the 4th stage, which is about convert. So they're going to be sharing about the ultimate guide to engaging and onboarding your ideal bookkeeping client. So up to this point, we've been talking about setting a plan for your business, where you want to go in 2023, who you want to attract, how you'll do that, and some practical content strategies to do that. And now it's about actually turning them into clients, those A-class clients. So today I'm going to be joined by Michelle Timperley, Ignition's account manager, and also Ethan Cooney, senior partnerships manager at Ignition. So Michelle is a former bookkeeper and business owner herself with 12 years of experience running that bookkeeping practice. So I'm sure she knows firsthand the value of implementing the right apps to automate workflows and just efficiencies to scale a business. So thanks a lot for joining us, Michelle.
That's great to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. And we've also got Ethan, who's the winner of the 2021 Accountants Daily 30 Under 30 Tech Innovator Award. That's a mouthful, but very cool. And he's bringing 8 years of experience working with accounting and bookkeeping practices with several high growth tech businesses. So he's done a lot of consulting with professionals, bookkeepers, accounting leaders, to devise partnerships that now benefit thousands of practices. So I will leave Ethan and Michelle to run through the agenda. I'll just go through the housekeeping quickly, which is just to reassure you that this session is being recorded, as all the sessions today at the summit are. So don't stress if you miss anything and want to go back and play it. There is also going to be time for a Q&A, so feel free to bring up the Zoom chat and Q&A panels now and send us a hello message. We will make time to answer those questions, as well as send out any resources through there too. We'll just let you know that we do have a quick scorecard as well. That's the basis for this summit today, is around our leads to loyalty framework, and there's a scorecard based on that as well. So we can give you a quick assessment on how your marketing is currently doing and send you some more resources. So if you haven't got that already today, feel free to click that link in the chat and go grab that. Otherwise, I will stop sharing and leave it to the guys at Ignition to jump into their session today. So over to you guys.
Fantastic. Thanks, Anthea, and great to see all of you. Thank you for tuning in live today. I was just saying before the webinar starts, it's incredibly hot here in Brisbane, 30 plus degrees today, and very humid. So hopefully it's not that hot wherever you're listening in from. But if you could jump into the chat, do let us know where you are listening into this summit from today. It would be great to hear where all of you are, and just give us a bit of insight on who we're talking to. Stephen's tuning in from Tassie. Welcome to the session, Southwest Victoria. Heading down there in a few weeks. Over in Perth, in Canberra. Fantastic. Hopefully from Singapore. Martin, welcome. Great to have you all here. 13 degrees in Orange. That sounds more comfortable than 33 here in Brisbane. Michelle, how are you going? You're based up on the beautiful sunny coast, so give you an opportunity to say a quick hello to everyone.
Yeah, hi everybody. It's great to be here today, and looking forward to the session. Thanks for having me.
Great. No, thank you for being here, Michelle. We've had someone from Alberta in Canada as well. That takes the cake for the longest away listening in from. So thank you for being with us. So Anthony did a great job introducing us. We both work for Ignition, so I might just speed through this and share a little bit about who we are and why we're speaking with you today. We're a software business, so originally founded out of Sydney, and very much born out of this need around engaging and converting clients and managing those client relationships. So we've been around for coming up on 10 years now, and we work with just over 6,000 bookkeeping and accounting businesses globally. And as a consequence of that, which I think is probably most exciting, is we've been able to engage or impact over 1 million small business clients as a result, which is fantastic. So we do a lot of work with the team at BizInc, and it's really good to be here on another summit today, talking around how we can onboard and engage and convert these clients after they've come through your marketing funnel, as Anthea mentioned before. So we're really wanting to hear a lot from Michelle's experience today, firsthand experience in running a bookkeeping business and growing that quite successfully, and then making the transition over into tech, of course. But the sort of broad agenda is, how do we start off on the right foot? So setting expectations with clients from the outset at that point of engagement? How do we make sure that we're on the same page as our clients, or rather our clients are on the same page as us with the services that we'll be providing them and what they're going to be paying for those services? We'll talk a little bit about what an effective onboarding process looks like, and it might not be something you've considered before. What does my actual customer journey or my client journey look like from original inquiry through to, loyal, loving client? So I'm sure you've heard plenty about that today. And we'll touch on very briefly, because it is a can of worms, pricing as well, and how we can start to bring the pricing conversation into that conversion piece as well. So we'll do our best to get through that in the next 40 minutes or so, but we will see how we go. So talking about scope creep, and the reason why we wanted to talk about this was that we see so many bookkeepers having to deal with the impact of not setting expectations up front at that point of engagement and converting them to a paying client. And this is the best time to set expectations with clients, is when you're bringing them on for the first time. As you all know, resetting long-standing client relationships, resetting the parameters for that relationship can be quite difficult. So setting up these new engagements and making sure that you're on the same page as your clients from the start is really what we're trying to help both bookkeepers and accountants do in their client relationships. And so just as a reminder, scope creep, when we talk about scope creep today, we're talking about work that you complete that you haven't been engaged for and you haven't agreed a fee with the client. So it often occurs when the parameters of that original job are exceeded. It's more complex, the data's a mess, there's last minute lodgements that come up, there's grant applications, there's tech support for zero MYOB, whatever it might be. You don't usually know in advance that these items will occur, especially if they're urgent. And we ran a survey just recently of just under 600 bookkeeping and accounting businesses, so decision makers in those businesses, small to medium businesses across Australia. And on average, those firms were losing just under 104 grand a year in unrecovered out of scope work, which was quite interesting to see. We knew that this number was going to be high, but potentially not this high. And that might be a little bit weighted towards some of the larger firms that were in the survey. But the point being that we know that scope creep, there is a huge opportunity here and a lost opportunity at the point of engagement to address some of these issues. And I guess the most important thing that we've seen, or this slide that's in front of you now, is that 95% of those who were surveyed had reported that clients were not being billed for that out of scope work that they were completing. And that means that you are spending time, mental and physical energy on the job, incurring overheads, incurring costs in delivering that work and not recovering your fees on that. And we think at the moment, particularly in the current economic landscape, the years that we're heading into, this is going to be more important than ever, making sure that you have got your scope buttoned up, making sure that you're getting paid for all the work that you're actually doing. And as professional services, which is what bookkeepers are, you need to make sure that that's agreed to and set in stone up front. So, Michelle, I might pass to you briefly for comment there. I know this is something you transitioned to when you were running your bookkeeping business, and there was a particular issue that you had, but how does that stat sort of resonate with you, and I guess what would be your sort of feedback on this?
Yeah, like those numbers are really high, and it's not surprising, and it's pretty scary too. So my little story is, when I first started my bookkeeping business, I engaged with clients using a PDF, and all I had in there was just my general terms and conditions. It didn't have anything at all about the types of services I'd be offering, the fees, or any particular terms and conditions. So I did end up in a bit of hot water from time to time, because I also didn't renew that agreement, and it was just really hard to manage, and it put a lot of friction on the relationship. And so it's incredibly important that we do engage with clients properly to have a healthy relationship, and making sure that we're getting charged for all the work that we do. And I have to confess that I'm definitely part of that 95% cohort there, because I was too nice, and I thought, it's just a half an hour. I can get that done in half an hour. But then a half an hour becomes 45 minutes. And then a week later, it's another hour. And yeah, it just becomes really, really awkward. So I understand this stat very, very well.
Awesome. No, that's great. And something we've seen reported across a lot of our customers as well. And I guess to follow on from that, some of the impacts we've seen, of course, are not just financial. There are some non-financial impacts around the quality of your work and, your mental health and well-being as well, your relationships with family and friends. So the point being that we just want to make sure that as part of this conversation around conversion, you're starting to think about how we set the rules of the engagement going forward, because this is the best time to do it at the point of that conversion. So I guess the question is, why aren't we properly engaged? And we're going to talk a little bit around, I guess, the options and what you might currently be doing, and then potentially a better way of approaching that. So your current process of, quoting the client an hourly rate, jumping in and doing all the work, taking on all that responsibility without any protection, and then invoicing the client in arrears. What that does is it relies on engagements that are out of date. As Michelle had said, it might be a PDF, it might be something that's historical, it's no longer relevant for how the client relationship's progressed, and it will assume that there's no hiccups in that as well. What we've seen is that is quite reactive, and it does train bad client behavior. It trains them to expect that they can ask you to do anything and that they don't have to pay for it up front or commit to a fee, and that they can then potentially dispute that down the track as well. And for the most part, we see bookkeepers not confident in their pricing up front, and so they're sort of delaying those conversations around fees as well. And keep in mind, we are talking about conversion, but we're sort of narrowing in on pricing and scope creep at the moment. The better way, which is future focused and trains the clients to expect a new set of engagement terms when they're requesting more work or when the scope changes, is by putting in place that regular cadence of engagement where after your initial conversion or signing them on as a client, you are setting up at least an annual meeting with them to discuss the scope of the work over the last year, specify any specific terms that are required for new work, review whether their business circumstances have changed, and then to make sure, finally, that you're compliant with your obligations as BAS agents as well, and as bookkeepers, you need to make sure that you're covered, even with something just because it's top of mind, like a data breach, right? Like, you need to make sure that you've got the terms within your engagement letter to cover you in the event of a data breach. Hopefully that will never happen to any of you with client information. But that sort of T's and C's, boring stuff that we never read, is really important. So it's definitely time to review your current terms and what you have in place. Keen to get your feedback on this as well, Michelle, but I think we find a lot of our customers not regularly reviewing or thinking about, what's changed in the client's business as well. So their business has grown, increased number of transactions, increased number of employees, but you've only signed on and agreed to do payroll 5, and now there's 10. They've grown their business, they've increased their revenue. There's bound to be complexity as the business grows and revenue increases. You're bound to be doing more work for them. Maybe they've introduced some new systems. If there's more regularity in their industry that they operate in that you've got to get across, their bookkeeping needs have become more. So these are things, if any of these have changed, we think it's really high time to sort of re-engage. So Michelle, keen to get your take on this and what are the key things to look out for?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it doesn't matter whether you charged fixed fee or hourly. It's incredibly important that you document this at time of quoting, because in most cases, the businesses that you're working with do scale. And the trap that I fell in originally was, I'm charging hourly, so I don't really need to document how many employees they had or how many bank accounts they had. But where I got into trouble was that as their business was growing, it was taking me longer to do the work. Then the client was disputing the fee. And I had nothing to fall back on. So it is incredibly important to document some sort of information as to where that client is at in their business, so that when the time comes to re-engage, whether it's fixed fee or hourly, it doesn't matter. You've got some data to compare to. And if you've ever done some stats on your business, I know with mine, I was absolutely shocked at how much money I was losing. Because again, I get that big guilt trip about charging too much, but in fact, there's, been an extra bank account, or they've doubled the employee size. So it is really, really important to protect your business and your income, and making sure that you're making some sort of documentation.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. And we've seen amazing numbers, 20% increase in profit as a result of tightening up some of this stuff for bookkeepers that are out there as well. Like, that's fantastic. That's not even taking on any new work. That's just you're making sure that you're actually engaged for the work that you're already doing. So we really, at the end of the day, we think engagements are really important in this conversation around conversion. It leads to more conversations, more opportunities to add value, easily reprice and discuss fees as well. And I think a big part of this conversation around, converting a client is how do we price them 100% accurate, from the get-go. And the reality is it might fluctuate and change every year, but if you don't set in stone that, or set in place that regular cadence of engagement, you haven't got an opportunity to readdress fees. And if you do, you're going to feel uncomfortable doing it as well. So putting this in place from the start is very helpful. I'm not going to go through this slide in much detail, but according to the guidance that we have read, these are the broad things that you should be including within your engagement letter for clients as part of your signing them on. And so feel free to take a screenshot, or we'll be able to send out the slides as well. But you need to make sure that at the very bare minimum, you're including the services you're expected to provide, how often those services are being provided, who's responsible for what, how those services will be charged, including the payment terms. And we did get clarification from folks like the Tax Practitioners Board and so on around including payment terms. That is definitely best practice. And then most importantly, what's not included in the scope as well. And Michelle later on is going to talk around some pricing and packaging and how to present some of that info as well. So hopefully that's helpful in just setting the scene for you to say, hey, this is important to consider when onboarding your clients. And the way to do that is by putting in place a regular, frequent, and a thoughtful engagements process. So Michelle, I guess where to start? If we've got bookkeepers who are on, they might just be starting out, they might already have businesses, established client base. Where do we start if we're just thinking about building this sort of new and improved funnel? So I'll pass it over to you. Oh, you're muted. The old Zoom mute.
Every time every time that happens, I think of the Kit Kat ad.
That's right.
Yeah, if you could please jump to the next slide, Ethan, that'd be fabulous. Yeah, so it's a really good question. Where do we start? And I guess from experience, managing the expectations up front is incredibly important. It helps the client to understand, what you expect from them and vice versa. And also it helps to alleviate any awkward conversation that you could potentially have in the future. So setting the expectations up front is really important. And that's, like what I'm going to do for you, when I'm going to have that delivered by. One of the key things that I put in my letter of engagement templates is timelines. So we all know we've got BAS deadlines, and it'll be interesting to see how many people in the group where, we ask clients for information and we need it by a particular time so that we can lodge the BAS on time. And we've always got a handful of those clients that get that information into us really late. And then so when it finally does come in, we drop absolutely everything to I've got to get that BAS done on time for this client. And that puts a lot of stress and pressure on the bookkeeper. So in my letter of engagement terms, I have a timeline where it says, right, the BAS is due on these dates. In order to get your lodgement done on these dates, I need all information from you by this particular date. If the information comes to me beyond that, there's no guarantee that I'm going to have that BAS lodged on that particular date. So I put the onus back on the client that they need to have everything that I need by a particular time frame. So that alleviates a lot of my stress. It also protects me if I have to lodge a BAS late because I'm actually waiting on information. It's important to quote your pricing. As I mentioned before, I might have just quoted an hourly rate and that was it. I didn't actually document how many bank accounts, payroll, things like that. Also to be really clear on the terms and conditions of your work. So if something does go out of scope, what happens? What's the fee going to be when we're going to charge you for that? And as Ethan mentioned before, what's not included. So my favorite thing, when I say it's my favorite thing, it's because it's the biggest liability, in my opinion, as a bookkeeper, is payroll. Payroll's a huge liability. So in my terms and conditions, I list out what I am personally responsible for payroll, and then I list the things that I'm absolutely not responsible for. So interpreting the award or understanding or working at what level the employees are on, things like that. I know that's changing with STP2, but the story is still the same, making sure that you put what's included and what's not included in there. And then controlling the work that's in process. And again, from experience, I don't know how many times I've had clients who like to tell me how to run my own business, and I found that incredibly frustrating. So I learned to take that power back and dictate, this is how I run my business. So this is when I'm going to get the work done. And a little tip for you guys who are charging hourly is that with my clients that I'm doing hourly work for, I actually allocate a particular time for them in the week or even a particular day of the week. And I let the client know, hey, listen, the first Tuesday of every month, I'm going to be working on your bookkeeping. And what was originally happening to me is that I was not charging the client until all the work was completed. So maybe January, February, March processing done, and the March BAS is done. So 3 months worth of work probably wasn't getting invoiced until April or even May, and that's really hard on cash flow. So what I did is that, look, I'm doing this on the first Tuesday every month, and regardless of where I'm at with the work, I'm billing. So setting up those processes in your engagement just paints a really clear picture so the client understands. They're not going to drag the chain and get that information into you late, and even if so, you can still charge for that work. And communication is incredibly important. It's so valuable. You know, you're building a relationship with your client. So have confidence in, you know, talking with your client about how you run your business, what the expectations are, the reasons why you're doing the things that you're doing, particularly what out of scope is. Like Ethan mentioned, there's a lot of bookkeepers out there that aren't charging for any extra work. So it is important we need to explain to a client what out of scope is, and communication is absolutely vital to nurturing that relationship.
That's awesome, Michelle. I just put in the chat there. We'd love to hear your experience with this, and feel free to share it in the chat and ask any questions as well. This is a great question from Stephen. Do you think clients read everything on engagement letters? Well, it's not just about the engagement letter. That's one part of it, and probably the answer is no. To be honest, Michelle, I don't know if you feel differently, but I would assume that they scroll through it at a relatively quick pace.
Yeah. If I could just make a real quick comment on that. So we get really bored as human beings. We don't like reading text. And I know I'm representing Ignition, but I'm also a customer of Ignition as well. So I'm a huge, huge fan. And what I love about Ignition is that all the really important stuff is colorful. It's got headings. It has your services. It has the special terms and conditions for those services, has your price, has your schedule. So it really stands out, and it's not hidden, and it's really easy to read. So all that like key information is presented easily. Then the general terms and conditions, you know, it might be a 1 or a 2-page document, and they can read that if they want to. But yeah, if it's just like pages and pages of black and white text, they probably won't read it. Yeah, they might only just read a few little pieces.
That's right. That's right. Fantastic. Well, look, we'll move on, I guess, to identifying, attracting, and engaging your ideal clients. I know that there's been other sessions today around these topics, but in terms of the engagement part, I think it is important to just go through, you know, what is a client worth to you? You know, what are the clients that you're looking to attract, and what makes them valuable? So, Michelle, keen to hear your sort of spin on this, and then after this we'll move into some of the pricing and packaging discussions.
Yeah, absolutely. So I really guess it depends on where you're at in your business. I know that when you're a startup, you'll just take anybody on board because you're building your experience, you're building your portfolio, you're building your client database. So we really just sort of take that on. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because this is how you'll learn. This is how you learn the type of people that you want to work with. But I guess with the current, you know, with COVID and everything, just the workload exploded, and we've all been so incredibly busy, and now things are starting to settle down a little bit. It's a great time to review your business and sort of make that decision about which clients do I really enjoy working with, and which ones do I make really good money from, and which of my clients really value what I do. So some of the things to think about first up is, you know, technology. Like, I love using technology in my business. And so which of your clients are quite adaptive to technology? Which ones are really scared of it? So when you're starting to filter out your client list, really pick and choose which ones that you can grow with and you can grow really efficiently with as well. And yeah, which clients are also subjective to creating efficiencies in their own business, because these guys who want change, who want to implement these changes, do tend to scale a lot faster, and therefore they need you more, and you can potentially make some more money from it as well. Another thing that I found too is having a niche if that's your desire, in a particular accounting software. So I have my favorite accounting software. And so if a new lead comes through and they're using a different software, I'll have a conversation about that. Have you considered converting? How are you currently using it? Is it working for your business? I don't just convert clients because it's my favorite. I definitely have that conversation with them about, why they're using it and is it efficient in their business at the time. So at this point at time of the scoping, if that software is working really well for them, but I don't want to use it, I won't take them on as a client. So it's okay to be picky and choosy about which clients that you bring into your business. For me, it was really important that clients respect me and they pay me on time. So when I first started the business, my terms were 7 days, and sometimes it would take 3 or 4 months for someone to pay me. And in the interim, I kept working because I felt guilty that I need to keep up. And there was just no respect there. And that really, really upset me. And so at that point in time, that's where I decided that, I'll give them the choice. They go on direct debit. If they don't want to go on direct debit, I will refer them on to somebody else. So working with people that respect you is really, really important. And also, I know you hear people talk about, finding your niche industry. Like me personally, I never found a niche industry because I loved the variety. But if you have a niche, that's great because you can become an expert, you can become the advisor. But if you're saying, Michelle, like I don't have a niche, that's really cool as well, because then you're just going to have this massive broad range of knowledge and experience, and then you can still bring more clients in and then share that knowledge with others. So yeah, if you're at maximum capacity or close to maximum capacity, now's a perfect time to really start thinking about who do I want to work with in the next year, who's going to see the value that I deliver, and also what services could I upsell to those clients as well.
Yeah, that's great, Michelle. I was going to ask you a question on the niching thing in particular, because we've seen several bookkeepers that I know personally have gone down that track and really utilize that sort of referral strategy to go, hey, like, not just do you have any friends who run businesses that need our support, but do you have any other contacts in your industry of microbrewing or whatever it might be as well that we can help. So that's been pretty interesting to see as a trend in the industry as well. So I guess going on from this, and maybe we should have flicked to this side earlier, Michelle, but was there anything further you wanted to add on this front? I guess this is just a click down into some of those categories and the different drivers. Yeah,
I probably jumped ahead a little bit there too, because I do get really excited about this topic. So we're going to think about what are the drivers. Obviously, we've got the financial value. So we've all got those clients that are really needy. Like you mentioned before, Ethan, they expect services for free. That's not a really healthy place to be, both emotionally, because I don't know about you guys, but I take a lot of things personally because I take it personally because it's close to my heart and I really want to deliver really good quality work. And I take pride in my work as well. So it's having that courage to decide, I need to find a client that values me. I need to find a client that wants to grow so I can offer more services, more advisory services, and make some more money from that client as well. So yeah, like you said as well, Ethan, about the niche, like one of my biggest customers, their niche is in cafes, and they don't take any other clients on other than cafes, and their business is just booming because they're constantly getting referrals from their existing pool of customers. And I mentioned earlier as well, like the phase of the business, whether it's startup, it's not so much your bookkeeping business. I'm talking about your customers. So if they're in a startup phase, you might like to be that nurturing person who likes to really help that person set up every little part of their business. Or you might be the type of bookkeeper that would prefer just those businesses who are scaling, and you can really just dig in deep and become the app advisor and the trainer, and then the payroll expert and things like that. So there's plenty of opportunities for growth and specialization depending on what you are passionate about and what your experiences are. And then with client satisfaction, just like communication, it's absolutely incredible. How do your clients feel about you? What do they say about you? is really, really valuable, because they're going to be talking to other business owners. They're going to be talking to their friends. Do they appreciate the value of the work that you do? And most of us know that most of the referrals that we do get is from word of mouth. So it's really, really important that, you know, we're finding the right clients to fit our business. We're delivering exceptional quality service, and then we're also having that client satisfaction to go with it.
No, that's brilliant. Thanks, Michelle. That's really helpful. So hopefully that's gotten us thinking around, you know, not just for new clients, but let's run all of our existing clients through this thought process as well, and go, do we want to continue working with these clients? And, you know, maybe it is time to offboard some potentially and start looking for others, or working closely with the ones that we do want to work with. But I guess more so on this notion of then converting, right? I think, and again, this has probably been covered to various degrees today, but something that you often do with our clients, Michelle, is this process map sort of process where you go through and map out what that kind of looks like. What are you sort of seeing as common, and what are maybe the major win areas that you're seeing for most bookkeepers, and maybe where are the common inefficiencies in this process? Because I would doubt that too many have gone through and sort of mapped it out to this level of detail.
Yeah. So if those of you who haven't seen this before, this is the process map. And to be perfectly honest, this is like a micro version of one of the process maps that I do for some of my customers. And basically what it is let's think about your whole entire process. And in this particular case, we're talking about client onboarding. Have you ever written down or put in a document form of how you actually onboard your client? It's incredibly valuable. And every customer that I work with that do this, they're just like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think of that. Oh, hang on. That takes me so long to do. I didn't know that this app could help me, you know, make this more efficient. So it's really important to be able to document your processes. So I'll just share a really, really quick story. I remember one week, even though it was a great week, it was probably the worst week. I got 11 new leads in 1 week, and I didn't have a process map. So I had no particular process for onboarding clients. So look, I was super excited, you know, 11 new leads in 1 week, but a lot of information fell through the cracks. I didn't win all 11 because I was that busy. Okay, with this person, I've done this, and this person, I've done this, and I was just missing things. So there was no process. So whether you onboard 1 client, 10 clients, 20 clients, it really doesn't matter. You need to have a process. And so what this is here is that we just have a discussion about, you know, where do your leads come from? And once that information comes through, where does it go from there? Is that process a manual process, or is it automated? How can we automatically communicate with their clients or that lead so they're feeling the love from us immediately, but effectively we've done nothing because we're using apps and zaps and things like that to communicate and ask for information from clients. So this process map session, we offer our clients who are on the professional and the scale plan, and it's complimentary. I know back in the day when I started, I would have given anything for somebody to have sat down with me and did a process map, because it's a game changer, and it brings incredible value to your business, and it will help you run so much more efficiently. So I hope I've explained that enough, Ethan. Just feel free to ask any questions if I sort of rambled on a little bit there.
No, I think that's fantastic. Really good. And yeah, key point for me being that you've got to take the time to identify those areas where you are spending too much time, or those gaps, right? Where, you know, to the previous slide, are we actually going through a process of capturing that information about our client and doing that profiling up front, so that as they go through our funnel and we come to converting them and signing them on as a client, we've actually got that context ready? Or are we sort of going back and forward with them and doing it really haphazardly and casually? The process map is something we do, John, to your question, on a one-to-one basis. So happy to send more information about that later on. We use a tool called Miro to do that. But this is just an example that Michelle's given us on a template, if you will. So you'll get the slides and you'll have the screenshot available, but it is something that we actually build on a customized one-to-one basis for our ignition customers. Now, pricing and packaging, potentially one of the biggest topics when it comes to converting clients, because I think there's a lot of anxiety around this, to be fair to say, Michelle. Like, you know, when you've got those leads coming through your funnel, you know, you've done the profiling to the best of your ability, you've done the discovery to the best of your ability. What the heck do I charge them? What fee do I put in front of them? You know, do I value price? Do I price hourly? Do I, you know, try my hand at upselling to some fixed fee work? You know, how do I present this? What if they ask questions about the price? How did I get to that price? All of these sort of things are common questions that we get. So I guess run us through your thought process when it comes to pricing services.
Yeah, thanks, Ethan. So yeah, it absolutely is one of the most common questions. And I guess, again, speaking from my own experience, is that I used to think that I had to charge hourly for absolutely everything. And then I used to also think that it had to be the same hourly rate, which is crazy, really, because, you know, you've got your bookkeeping services, which is data entry and processing, but then you've got payroll, which has such big liabilities. And then you've got your BAS and your IAS and finalizations, and these are all tax services. And so they really should be charged at a premium rate. And so my revelation was, hang on a second, let's just think about this for a minute. And the service offerings that I deliver aren't all the same, and they certainly aren't all equal. And so what I've done on this little slide here is sort of just divided it up for you to give you an example. So we've got bookkeeping services, which really just comprises of bank reconciliations, you know, managing debtors and payables, and then we've also got payroll. So you can either do fixed fee billing, which is perfectly fine. I see a lot of people do this really, really well. I didn't get that. Sorry, that was Siri interrupting. Sorry about that. What those people who are doing really, really well with fixed fee is that they're adding out of scope, and they're managing that out of scope really, really well. So they're not going to be part of that stat that we saw at the beginning of the slide. Now, you can still bill hourly if you want to, but it's still incredibly important that you document where that client is at. So how many bank accounts do they have? How many employees do they have? How often are you doing payroll? Okay, because the scope of the work will increase over time. So you can charge either way for your bookkeeping services. And also with the bookkeeping services, it's quite variable. As a bookkeeper, we all know that, because, you know, one month it might only take you 2 hours, the following month might take you 4, and then the following month might only take you 2 again. So the scope of the work does change. However, with a tax service, it's pretty steady and consistent, especially if you're doing the processing yourself. You know, your BAS and your IAS is around the same time, things like that, your payroll tax and your STP finalizations. So it's quite safe to say that you can definitely do fixed fee billing for this one, and you can absolutely charge a more premium service because you have to be a BAS agent to be able to do those services. You have to have all your CPD hours, you have to have your licensing, you have to have insurance, all these things you have to take into consideration. And then we go up to advisory services, and this is where you know, you can start to add the cream on top of your current revenue and become a really trusted advisor to your client. So one example I've got here, like everybody talks about financial reporting, and most of us send our clients a P&L. But like we mentioned before, how many people read our terms and conditions? Well, how many people actually read their P&L? Versus, you know, let's have a meeting every month, or let's have a meeting every quarter. Let's review your financials. Let's talk about what's changed in the last month or the last 3 months. Why did this change? What happened? How can we keep an eye on that? Let's set a budget. Having this conversation with your client is incredibly valuable, rather than just handing them a piece of paper with a P&L on there as well. So again, this is a premium service, and it's not something, you don't have to offer that every single month either. Maybe you just want to offer it every quarter, or maybe twice a year, just depending on what it is that you're doing. But I guess what I really just wanted to point out is, if you can start thinking about your services and then separating them into cohorts, what's variable, what's a fairly fixed sort of steady type of revenue or service, my apologies, and then what's the best way that fits for you to be able to price for that service.
Absolutely. Now, Michelle, that's super helpful for thinking about our pricing framework, but for those who are listening in today, and we have, you know, as you said earlier, we're at max capacity. We've already got all the client work there. Can't really take on any new clients. How do we think about repricing where we've had a historical or a legacy model pricing model, and how do we ask these questions and have these conversations around presenting our prices to these existing clients?
Yeah, another great question, which is why it's incredibly important that, you know, we review our engagements annually, because the scope of the work can change. You could have had an extra service, things like that. But let's just say, like, there's two parts to it. Let's just say that the client hasn't scaled at all. You know, how do I increase my fees? So in my general terms and conditions, I automatically stipulate in there, and it's not hidden, that the fee is going to increase every single year, whether it's based on CPI or it's a combination of CPI and the scope of the work, if it's increased in comparison to last year. So, you know, that's one portion. And when I started adding that into my general terms and conditions using Ignition, it was just so easy to increase that fee. And not one of my clients ever said, you know, oh, got a fee increase, what's going on? So they expected it because it was in my letter of agreement. And so it was just so easy, incredibly easy for me to put my prices up each year. And, you know, when we're talking about what do I charge, things like that, it's really subjective, like it says here on the slide, because, you know, you look at a bookkeeper who's maybe doing it for 15 years versus somebody who's just entered into the industry. So, you know, those rates are going to be different. The experiences are going to be different, depending if you have a niche and you're an expert in that field. Also, are you certified in a particular app, things like that. So that's all going to come into play as to how you're going to charge your fees. But I mentioned before earlier on, I think the critical part is documenting at that point in time just some average stats about that client. Because what I do when I re-engage next year is I check last year's and have a look and look at that growth. Potentially we should be doing that every 3 months anyway if they're on fixed fee, just to see if they've got that massive growth spike. But what happens is, let's just say I've got a client where, you know, they originally had 2 employees and now they're up to 6 employees. They had 1 bank account, 1 credit card, but now they've got 2. So obviously I'm going to increase the fee accordingly, and I'll just send them an email and let them know that, you know, your business is growing. Let's revisit the pricing. Here's our new proposal to outline all of that. Something else that I wanted to mention, Ethan, which gets forgotten a lot about pricing. We've got a pretty good handle on what our overheads are, right? Like we know how much our electricity, our internet, telephone bills, all that sort of stuff, our subscriptions, everything. We know all that. What gets missed is our CPD hours. Now, we all know that we've got to have X amount of CPD hours. How much does that cost you? So this is time away from billable work. You may have to travel, you may have to pay for accommodation, you have to pay for food, you may have to pay for airfares. So you need to incorporate your CPD hours as part of your package price or your hourly price, you know, over that 12-month period across your clients. And also another little tip is, I can't recommend this enough, and I jump this into every one of my customers, is managing out of scope is critical. Whether you're doing hourly or whether you're doing fixed fee, it doesn't matter. You must keep on top of that out of scope so that you don't become part of that stat where, you know, you're losing 100K per year in doing work for free.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Michelle. And look, we are rocketing through, and we haven't got too much time left. So okay. I think we'll talk to this slide, and then I'll talk to sort of next steps, and then we might look to wrap up. And if by popular demand we might need to come back and do another webinar if everyone's enjoying the content. But talking about converting, because this topic is conversion of clients. You know, we've got an example of an Ignition options proposal on screen at the moment, where you're able to build in 3 templates and basically 3 options, 3 levels of service, templates and packages. I think Steve in the chat mentioned they'd been using this potentially as well. Michelle, talk us through this sort of approach, and have you seen any of your customers using these sort of options to, you know, upsell or convert clients on the right package? And a further question to that, are they letting their clients self-select the package, or are they sort of saying, here are our standard offerings and we recommend that you go with this one due to X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when I think of options, I think of opportunity. So to give you a bit of background, my very first job was working at McDonald's. So if any of you have worked at McDonald's before, you know the first thing they teach you is to upsell. And I've always carried that through, because if you don't ask, you don't get, right? So options is a great way to showcase different tiers of services that you can offer. Now, options was one of our biggest feature requests from our customers. So our customers were screaming out for this, and they've embraced it so well. And the feedback we're getting from our customers is that, oh my goodness, I can't believe how many customers have chosen the premium service. I never thought in a million years they would have chosen that. And so presenting like different options for your clients, as you can see on this slide here. And you can also choose which one you recommend to your clients, so they can focus on that one a little bit more. They can ask you questions about it, things like that. But it's a great way to showcase a broader range of your services, and then showing them how affordable it is and the value that they're going to get from that service, rather than just giving them one proposal with what they've asked for. We know that they might want to do payroll, but we know that they hate it. So let's put it in a proposal and say, hey, look, you know what? It's really not going to cost you that much extra. Let me manage that burden for you. Let me do all that compliance for you. And you'll be surprised at how often people actually tick that upsell package. That's really valuable.
Fantastic. No, I absolutely echo that. And you can see there, and we won't go into a demo today, but if you're interested, please let us know if you want more detail. But you can very easily, as Michelle's talked about today, split out the different fee types for each of those different services. So you can have variable services, and there's an out of scope line item in there within that variable category, combined with a fixed fee offering, because you know that your costs to deliver these services are going to stay the same. This is a great way of being able to introduce those new services to go, hey, here's what we're able to deliver at a fixed fee. But should you want to engage us for, let's just say you're hiring more staff and you want us to manage the payroll, you've got that caveat and that contingency to go back and say, hey, as per the agreement, you've added 5 staff, we're going to adjust your fee going forward to reflect the yada yada. So the ability to use these proposals in combination with your engagement letter, so that it's not just a boring looking T&C document, is really powerful. So if you're not, and this is a concept that doesn't necessarily just rely on Ignition, although it'd be great if you did use Ignition. You don't just have to provide a boring engagement letter. You can actually provide a proposal alongside that engagement letter to go, hey, here's the actual summary and schedule of the services that I'm offering, and here's the value to you as a business owner. So look, as we wrap up today, we actually have introduced a new plan specifically for bookkeepers, which will allow you to engage up to 80 clients. So it's between our 2 existing plans, and it's been heavily requested by a number of bookkeepers who have since come on board with Ignition. You do get access to that options feature that we've talked through. You can engage up to 80 clients. So it's in between the 2 main plans that we've typically offered, and you get tailored onboarding and implementation support, including access to that process map that we have showcased earlier today. Incredibly valuable. If you are interested in this, I think there's an exit survey that you can fill out after you leave, and we can send you some more information on how to take advantage of that. It's limited time to the end of this month. So next month, sorry. What are we in? November, next month. So if you're interested, fill in that form and we'll send you more info. Finally, I did just want to mention one final thing around our partnerships with the various different bookkeeping groups and associations in this space. Whether you're a member with the ICB or the ABN or Pure Bookkeeping, ICNZB, NZQBA, all the acronyms, we actually have their engagement letters preloaded into Ignition for you if you are a member. And it will allow you to actually go in and use those engagement letter templates that have been legally vetted and provided by those professional networks within your engagements. The key point being that those engagement letters are automatically created for every client. Once you've set up the template, which they come pre-formatted, you don't have to go in and manually make those changes to the terms and conditions. Those are automatically pulled through based on the wording in those particular templates. So look, as we wrap up, I guess in summary, I think and Michelle, feel free to jump in here if I'm sort of missing this, but can make sure you communicate your value clearly, and you can do that through your pricing strategy. You can do it through your proposal. You can do it through the scoping. You can do it, at the point of engagement, but then continue to do that going forward as well. So after the point of initial conversion, then signing them up as a client, make sure you put in place that annual review, at least annual review, where you're sitting down with your client to go, hey, here's what the last year looked like. How did we go? Here's where expectations weren't met. Here's where we exceeded expectations, and utilize tools to help support you in doing that, to give you confidence around your pricing. Would that be fair to say, Michelle? Any sort of wrap up comments from you?
Oh, 100%. Like, communication is key, right? And what I love about Ignition is that it just makes it really pretty and easy to read. So
absolutely. And look, I guess in summary, what we've seen for bookkeepers that have put these processes in place is that it's de-risking your business. So it's removing the risk of you completing work that you're not going to get remunerated for, removing the risk of a client pushing back on fees at the point of signing them up as well. If you've got a team, it's helping your team morale. They're actually better bought into the work. They know that you're going to get paid. They're going to get paid for the work that they're doing. Better profit margins, everyone likes that. And then better client relationships that are more transparent as well. So thank you for having us today. Thank you, Michelle, for sharing your experience and insight. Really appreciate it. It was a really good discussion. And we did have to rip through some of the content there and skip a little bit. So that's okay. Anthea, I'll pass back to you.
Thanks so much, Ethan and Michelle. It was great to have you on, and particularly appreciate your insights, Michelle, being on the coalface yourself. That was really, really useful. So we will leave it there because we've got one last session to go to on retaining clients, and that's with Katrina of Pure Bookkeeping. So I'm sure that's going to be a great session ahead. But thank you very much to Ethan and Michelle, and for everyone coming along today. We will send recordings and resources, and if you want to get in touch with Ignition, we'll send the details as well. So thanks. If you have any questions, just reply to the email we send out and we can pass them on. Thank you, everyone. See you in the next session.